We are recording. Welcome to the Split Take Podcast. I am your host, Jacob.
And I'm your co-host, Chandler. And today we're talking about licorice pizza again.
Another hour-long review of licorice pizza. The fans demanded it, and who are we to refuse?
Well, we're gonna say no. I'm gonna say no.
No, we are actually talking about the Jean-Luc Godard film Pierrot le Fou. Here's the criterion.
Oh, you bought
reference.
It. Nice.
Yeah, I've had it for a little bit in preparation for this. The film's from 1965, as I've read off of this criterion. Yeah, I don't know. Do we want to quickly talk about anything we've been watching as of late?
I think the only ones the only like big one I want to mention. Two movies. One I'll touch on briefly because I know we're gonna have to discuss it at some point, and that is The Searchers.
Yes.
I rewatched.
Well, it's going to be a while because that's on the BFI list, but it's way up there.
Yeah, at some point I know we'll discuss it. I just want to say I watched The Searchers. It's been like 2 or 3 years since I last seen it. I saw it in the theater because I was playing at Harkins for Tuesday Night Classics, and I gotta say, Jacob, buddy, you're wrong. You're wrong.
It's okay to be wrong. I'm okay with that eventuality. I am, The Searchers is one of those movies. I love Westerns, and I would really like to love The Searchers more than I do. I've never gotten into it. I have given it 3 chances now.
3?
And I'm probably going to keep on watching it. It's just, I'm probably going to keep on trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, but maybe one of these days I'll figure out it's a round peg going into that round hole.
You got time.
But
got your whole life.
When we record it for the podcast, I do actually have a book on the making of The Searchers.
Oh, okay. So I might have to read that as well.
I will read this for that, and maybe that will help indoctrinate me into the ways of John Ford's The Searchers.
Only other thing, 2 quick things I want to mention. I watched a bunch of Steven Seagal movies last week, and
a bunch. I saw one.
Like 3.
Oh my god!
3. I watched. Hold on, let's see if I remember them all. I watched The Asian Connection, Beyond the Law, and one called Contract to Kill. And I just want, for people who are aspiring Steven Seagal completionists, I just want to give you a little bit of...
They don't exist.
No.
Hopefully.
I just want to give you a little bit of advice because I've narrowed the types of Steven Seagal films down to 2. The Steven Seagal starring vehicles and the Steven Seagal supporting vehicles. And of the Steven Seagal movies I've seen, just around 6 or 7, 9 times out of 10, Seagal is best when he is a supporting character. I watched two movies. The Asian Connection is a movie where he plays a supporting character, and Contract to Kill is where he's the lead. Now, I say this 9 times out of 10 because A Good Man is probably the best Steven Seagal movie, and he's essentially the lead in that one. There's a lot of Seagal, and it's funny. But in I've looked at the title 3 times and I don't remember. Contract to Kill. He is the star, and when he is the star, 90% of the movie is just going to be him in a room sitting down talking to people. And even the action scenes, he's in a chair when it happens. Whereas The Asian Connection, which was the best of the movies I watched last week, Steven Seagal is a villain. It's essentially a movie about criminals who steal from a bank who don't realize that Steven Seagal's money is in that bank. So Steven Seagal gets his right-hand man to dispatch the criminals, but his right-hand man ends up working with the criminals to steal more money from Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal is like the villain. He's barely in it. But it's a great movie because every 15 to 20 minutes, you it's almost like they know, the director knows in your brain, you're like, where's Steven Seagal? And every time your brain thinks that, he shows up. And there
mathematically
is one scene
calculated Steven Seagal.
Yes. There is one scene about 40 minutes into the movie where it's been about a good 20-25 minutes since I had last seen Steven Seagal, and I was thinking to myself, where is Seagal? And like clockwork, a scene begins where Steven Seagal is just teaching Tai Chi to what I can only assume is a sex slave. And it's about 40 seconds of him just going, and it just ends. Nothing happens. Not a word is said. Nothing happens to advance the plot. But it's beautiful because I spend that 45 seconds just crying, laughing. So
I will make mention now that you're doing some very intricate hand gestures. Obviously, Chandler is holding his mic today. There's no reason. He was just
no.
He wanted it to be closer, but he didn't want it to be oppressively closer to his mouth. So
I want options.
This is an experiment. Apologies, dear listener.
We'll see if it works.
The experiment doesn't work. It certainly is fun watching you do Steven Seagal hand moves with a microphone in one hand.
But yes, if Steven Seagal is the star, steer clear unless it's a good man. One other quick movie I just want to mention that I watched was Scanners. Scanners is directed by David Cronenberg, and for people who are somewhat aware of Scanners, it has the most famous head exploding scene in cinema history.
I'm only aware of that head exploding scene and of the Criterion edition, which has a pretty cool cover art.
It does. I'm gonna pick up the Criterion. The thing about David Cronenberg is that I always really want to like his movies, and they're more interesting to think about than to actually watch. And this one I think has a very clear issue. And I'm sorry to say it, but this movie is nerfed by virtue of being Canadian.
Oh, I'm sorry, your head exploded there. Oh, jeez.
I was watching this movie and I was just thinking, because all the locations they go to are just like boring white snow, flat lands with little bit of nature in the background. All the buildings are like 1980s Canadian decor. All of the actors, which most of them are Canadian with the exception of Michael Ironside, are just boring, generic Canadian actors with little to no personality. And the whole time I was watching it, because the story's pretty interesting, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just thinking to myself, this would be so much better if it wasn't in Canada. So I know Cronenberg doesn't make horror movies anymore, but this movie is worth watching. It's got some very interesting. It's a horror movie that's about telekinetic like super soldiers. So a majority of the horror is just in sounds and reaction shots, which is really interesting. But yeah, the head exploding scene comes in like the first 15 minutes, and it doesn't really get close to that until the end climax, which is almost even better. But it's only about 90 minutes. It's on HBO Max and the Criterion channel. Definitely recommend it. I'm gonna buy it, the Criterion, just for the cool cover. So that's it. That's all I've watched.
Now let's talk about real cinema.
Real cinema. Yep.
If you will. So yeah, quick background. Pierrot le Fou, 1965, directed by our favorite Jean-Luc Godard. It is starring Jean-Paul Belmondo and Anna Karina, and they play two people in France.
Yeah. They're just fucking around.
Oui, oui. Yeah. So they both run away. They're kind of like lovers. They get in. There's gun runners, and they get in trouble with them, and they go on a kind of a road trip journey through France.
Hijinks ensue.
Godard style avant-garde hijinks ensue. They make their way to the south of France, and they have romantic troubles in their relationship, and stuff happens. I don't know, how does one go about describing a Godard movie? So I've seen this before. Obviously, I have the Criterion, and I'm yet again, this is another one where Chandler has not seen it, so I'm curious as to what Chandler thought. Chandler, what did you think of Pierrot le Fou?
This marks a monumentous occasion in the split take lore, because it is this episode where I will say I think Jean-Luc Godard is redeemed. I don't think I hate him anymore. I kind of like this. My first thoughts, my broad strokes here: Badlands, but good.
When you said that on Letterboxd, and I'd never made the connection in my mind, but now, yes, it bears a remarkable similarity to Badlands.
A lot. It's funny too because on paper, it sounds like the worst movie ever, Jean-Luc Godard's Badlands, but it was pretty good. I I really liked it. It's a movie that it's really simple. It's just a simple story of two people on the lam engaging in some dangerous love, but I don't know, that it's just so effortlessly cool. It's so playfully made that it's just fun to watch, even though I don't there are times where I didn't really know what was going on. The story just sort of happens. There's no real rhyme or reason to how the narrative progresses. And by the end I don't even necessarily know what it was all about or what the point of it was, but it's just there's so much playfulness in how it's made and presented. This in particular, what I enjoy is that Godard is just so he's not even attempting any sort of realism. Uh, it's sort of it's borderline obtrusive style, but I really like it.
I'd almost say
in the
like this is his most Godard-esque style film,
Yeah.
where he's really putting a lot of crazy elements out there. But I also think it's also one of his more grounded movies in terms
Mhm.
of narrative and um, a progression of the narrative, and just in general, for the most part, the film is shot kind of normally in a
Yeah.
way that I think only makes sense when you're
As
talking about
normal as a
Godard.
Godard.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think early on what really clued me in was that the scene where Jean, what's his name, Belmondo or something
Jean
like that.
Paul Belmondo, yeah, Ferdinand,
Yeah,
or
yes,
the
Ferdinand.
titular
Yes,
Pierrot.
yes, Ferdinand. He's going to his wife's party or whatever with the business people. For some reason, they're just in like blank rooms with like intense neon lights. Where you're just like, what kind of party is this? Where they just spout philosophy in a very colorful room. But I think what really sold it was the scenes where he's taking Anna Karenina, just driving her home, and I love the way he shoots just driving the street lights, the nighttime driving scenes,
They're
where
really
it's
cool
just
the way the
rotating
colored
color
lights.
wheels. It's really simple. He's in a black backdrop with just rotating colors on a wheel. Again, no attempt to make it look realistic, but it's a lot of fun. And even when the story is not necessarily grabbing me, because every once in a while it'll just be like I'll get kind of bored. There'll be some sort of new filmmaking thing that makes it fun. It's just it has all the Godard staples. It has the incredibly attractive leads. It has the scenes where it's nothing but them reading from philosophy books. It's got cars, playful edits. It's like everything you want out of a Godard movie. I can see why people really like it.
It's definitely my favorite Godard.
Even
And
over Viva Savie?
yeah, even over, yeah, definitely over Viva Civi. So I think Godard works best when he's working in color, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's because it's easier to get clued into his philosophy on filmmaking, in that black and white has this kind of looking back on it. I'm sure it didn't have this connotation when it was made, but things like Breathless and Viva Civi and a lot of his older films, looking back on them now, they have this kind of air of pretension because they're in black and white, that they should be taken more seriously than Godard perhaps wants you to. And so when I see the black and white of those films, I'm like, it it's a little snoozy. Like I watch it, and it seems like there's a disconnect between the style that Godard is going for with the acting and the editing and a lot of the different elements, but the black and white is kind of keeping it subdued and more serious than I think it needs to be. And the color in Pierrot le Fou instantly like clues you in that this is just he's just throwing shit at the wall. He's having fun. It's vivid, bright colors, primary colors, lots of reds, blues, and yellows. And so it almost has like, I think Pierrot le Fou is a the title comes from like an old clown type uh character. And so the kind of vivid colors kind of clue you into just kind of like the funness and the
Yeah.
irreverence of Godard's style. And that helps set the mood and the tone, and it makes it more kind of visually appealing in a way that I think his black and white films aren't. And I love that in Roger Ebert's review of Pierrot le Fou, he starts out by saying that every time he reviews a Godard movie, he gets angry letters from people telling him that Godard is boring and stupid and stop giving him good reviews. And he said he's probably going to get more of those letters because he liked Pierrot le Fou. And interesting enough, I think this is Godard's most approachable film. Like if anyone were to ask me where to start with Godard, I'd say, well, if you're a film student, maybe Breathless, because that you kind of have to.
Yeah,
or
it's homework.
Pierrot, I think, is by far his most approachable movie, and it's the one I like the most.
Yeah, I think another one that I got. I honestly think a huge reason as to how I got more into Godard is that I used like Seijun Suzuki as like an appetizer. He's the guy who did Tokyo Drifter, Branded to Kill. He's got that same sort of like cinematic irreverence where it's just whatever he feels like should be in the scene is in the scene. It's completely inorganically designed in a way that's just meant to appeal to the senses. And I think just really loving those movies really helped me enjoy this because, I don't know, I can see myself like 2 or 3 years ago just brushing all this off as just sort of, style for the sake of style, which you could argue to an extent that it is.
I think it is.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I've come to enjoy that kind of just... Because it would be one thing if it was... It's thoughtless, not effortless.
Yeah. I feel something about it being French, kind of, I give it a pass for being Godard, for being a little pretentious, because I could imagine an American-style Pierrot le Fou would just be insufferable.
Badlands. Kind of. That's more focused on the philosophy of the actions, but yeah, something, I don't know. I'm trying to think of one now. I would love to see Wes Anderson's Pierrot le Fou.
That's true.
That's Moonrise Kingdom. That's essentially Moonrise Kingdom.
But it's also with
I don't want to see that.
With the way that Godard, like, he just throws in lines of philosophy and lines of what I'll call nonsense. Like, I'm sure they have a meaning, but it just it's just so much style, so much pretentiousness, so much philosophy that it does a U-turn where it goes from being annoying and stuffy to being fun and, like we said, irreverent. Like, there's just so much. And that's the other thing about the movies. Every time I watch it, there's something new you can, I don't want to say appreciate. Like, I don't ever get emotionally attached to this movie. I don't love it in the same way, but I do like notice filmmaking choices that Godard did, little details here and there. They're just fun. Like, oh, that's an interesting innovation in film, an interesting style choice. And that's the kind of the fun about it's like a Where's Waldo of filmmaking style. Where it's just like, oh,
true,
there's something. And you're just picking out in all these details because it's so dense. Every single scene has so much nonsense, so much pretentious, so much philosophy. I mean all of this in a good way, in a way that
cinematic jungle gym.
Yeah, if I was talking about almost any other movie, I'd mean these words in a negative way, but there's something that's endearing about this. And I think a lot of that goes to the performances. I think Jean-Paul Belmondo and Anna Karina are both very attractive presences on screen. I don't necessarily mean that physically. I mean they're just interesting to watch.
They have interesting faces, and they're both very charismatic. I mean, there's a reason that these two are Godard's like most frequent collaborators, and I think just having, again, it's the fact that it's such a simple story. It has that style you're looking for. It has the actors that you like. It's the perfect Godard movie. I also think that as opposed to his other movies, specifically Viva sa Vie, where the philosophy just sort of grinds the film to a halt. I think that's the only bad scene in Viva sa Vie, is where she just goes to the diner and listens to that guy talk about philosophy for like 5 minutes. It's so dumb. But this one, it makes a lot more sense because, Belmondo is like sort of in like this like ennui, this essentially a midlife crisis almost, and she's sort of like, she's that manic pixie type who's just trying to help him sort of understand what his life should be about, I guess, and it makes more sense. But also just, I don't know, I love the way that Godard just makes these really cinematic people do kind of goofy stuff. I love the end where he's just wrapping himself in dynamite.
Yeah.
Good outfits too. I think her red dress towards like the second act is a very iconic piece of cinema clothing.
I also think
but it's
his
one of those.
suit with the red shirt underneath, very iconic.
I remember because he died recently, and I remember when he died, what really got me interested in this movie is people were sharing that image of him with the blue painted face,
Mm-hmm.
which I just thought was an interesting image. But again, it's one of those things where I'm like, it's interesting. I don't know why.
Well, this is probably one of Godard's most visually iconic movies, which also helps in that it's just so interesting to look at. As I mentioned, like there's the color, but you also have the way he's playing with color and composition in interesting ways like that, with the blue paint on his face, and then the party scene in the beginning with the lights,
Yeah.
colored lights, and then often white is often used quite a bit, where they'll be in a room and the wall is painted white, and there's only like there's a red chair and there's a blue vivid thing, and it's just fun and interesting to look at. And that's the other thing that makes it engaging in a way that I think other Godard movies aren't, is that it is a road trip movie. And so the locations are constantly changing, and the locations that Godard does use are all so interesting visually, and they kind of set a mood and a tone too. And unlike some things like Godard's Contempt, which I don't care for, that's all almost in one kind of location, and it's an interesting location, but it's just one, and it just kind of gets repetitive.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what you're saying about the philosophy, and like Vivre sa Vie. There's a scene where that gets kind of grating, and that's the thing that I think works with Pierrot le Fou, is that the philosophy is never a monologue of philosophy. There's like little snippets of it, and then it moves on, and it never stays long enough on that for it to become just meaningless words.
Yeah. Beautiful vistas. I enjoy that's the seaside south of France. That little trip. The pier is really nice. But my favorite little bit of production design is just that Anna Karina's apartment. There's just guns. There's like 7 or 8 assault rifles just on her wall.
Yeah.
Just not even like hung up, just leaning against the wall. It's fun. The very short man who
the short
crosses
gun running man. I can't help but think of President Mimo.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yep. Very Mimo-esque. Yeah, I think the only part of the movie, I guess, like the story where it gets a little weird to me, it's just at the end where she reveals that she has her brother is actually her boyfriend, and they like betray him. And it's just, I don't know, it's weird. But again, it's one of those things where I'm so confident that it means something, I just don't care to like look into it.
Well, that's interesting, because I think the film really picks it. There's a little slump when they're not quite at the south of France, but they're just kind of like on the lam. They don't have any money, and I think the film kind of, the pacing gets a little wonky there. But then near the end, once the after the scene with the Lebanese queen woman, where Belmondo's eating a giant piece of cheese, and then he meets up with Anna Karina again. After that, that's when like the movie just kind of takes off, and I am with it 100% of the way to the end. Oh yeah. So in the beginning of the movie, there's some talk about the painter Velasquez, and there's a quote that talks about tone, form, space, and shape. And this, I feel like, is the perfect movie to talk about just basic shapes and primary colors, almost like you go show this to a group of kindergartners who are learning about the primary colors and how to mix them for the first time. It's kind of a funny image just to think about kindergartners watching a Jean-Luc Godard movie, but I feel like this film has a really interesting grasp on shape and color and playing those two things off of each other, and also the use of negative space. I talked earlier about the use of white often, where walls are just painted white and there's just objects that are just bright, vivid colors, and it's playing with those elements in a way that I don't think I've ever seen any other movie really do. Criterion is a nice thick book, which is nice. So often they just have like one essay and it's kind of thin. This has a chunky little what is it? It's like 30-40 pages. It's cool frames from the film, and you can see all the cool faces and how Godard plays with like the color red here and framing his characters and his actors. Really interesting ways that he's playing with editing too in this movie. It's like a montage collage in certain times where he communicates things through sound and through still images that he's cutting to, like when the two guys beat up on Jean Paul Belmondo. He cuts to paintings, I think, and just has like the sounds of him getting beat up, and it's more focusing on like pure evocative imagery rather than the actual showing the actual thing. So it's a substitute of reality for pure cinematic editing, and it's I think it's the most effective that Godard has ever been at doing that. Obviously, he's done a lot of this stuff elsewhere in his movies, but I think that the problem with it elsewhere is that it doesn't um they're interesting experiments, but here you have a firm grasp on characters, and you like Ferdinand as a character, and so you are here, you are on board for that, and you have a grasp of the narrative and what kind of movie, the genre that it is. And so once you have a firm basis in that, the more kind of experimental editing techniques that Godard makes use of are more approachable. And I wish, uh, I know Godard has an aversion to kind of immersive, emotionally engaging filmmaking, which is fine. I appreciate that he's doing his own thing. It's just, I wish there were more movies like Pierrot le Fou.
Well, that was fun.
Yes, I had an interesting conversation with the audience while you were gone.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Evan. I don't remember what we were talking about.
We were talking about Pierrot le Fou, the Jean-Luc Godard film from 1965.
The arguably best one. I think I still like Viva La Vie more. Just barely, but also I watched, I don't know what it was about that movie when we discussed it for the podcast, but I watched it 3 times that week.
Was it that many? My God.
Yeah, I watched it once, and then after that I watched it with a commentary, and then I watched like 80% of it again. So I think I have more, I guess, memory of it. I do like this a lot, and I'd like to pick it up. With my $10 off Criterion coupon, I just might say fuck it to scanners.
I've been so good recently about not buying extraneous things, Blu-rays, all that. I've cut out my visits to Zia, saving the money effectively, but Criterion, they knew how to get me. $10. I can't skip the flash sale now, whenever it's going to be.
You definitely can. Definitely can't.
I just can't.
Probably soon. Yeah, probably going to be soon. I've been pretty good about it too, but the more and more I forgot. I always forget. I look in my room and I see it just sitting on a shelf. I always forget I bought the fucking Tati box set.
Watch it.
And I've still only watched. I mean, I've seen, Mon and Cole and Playtime, and what's the one you like? That's Mon and Cole. Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
Yes, because I remember you watched that because you you figured out a Sardaukar meme from that movie.
I did. I forgot. Our nichest one.
It is.
But yeah.
Yes.
Can I also say, great
No.
car. Great car. I think just watching Drive My Car has like sort of keyed me into movie cars, and I was just thinking that's a nice looking car.
Top
I mean,
10
it's
movie
different.
cars right here. You got this one.
Movie cars.
The Drive My Car.
Drive My Car. The titular Drive My Car.
That's it.
Just the car Ryan Gosling drives in Drive. I don't fucking remember what kind of car.
This is our top 10 list. There are only 3 entries on it.
That's all. That's it. Now you got me thinking. You know, I was thinking about incorporating as like a little section where we just do like a quick rundown of top 5 insert movie list here, right? Just a quick one. Because I was thinking about diner scenes today, like top 5 diner scenes.
Maybe that will be a segment on our next episode. I think my favorite scene, maybe in the whole movie, is when Jean-Paul Belmondo he gets betrayed by Marianne and her boyfriend, and they're sailing off to the island, and Ferdinand meets this guy who's crying.
Oh, yes, that is the best scene. I agree.
And it's, I don't know, it might be the most like genuine character-driven scene that Godard ever did.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
That like sparks emotion from me.
Dude. Oh, okay. I thought the internet went out again. Sorry, continue.
So anyway, so there's this guy crying on the pier for those who haven't seen the movie. And he's listening to music, and this music is reminding him of all his failed past loves. And he just gives this monologue to Ferdinand, and it might be the only monologue that Godard's ever done that I haven't found insufferable in some way, shape, or form.
Because it's not a philosophy dump. It's an actual human being with actual pain, sharing that pain with another actual human being. It's beautiful.
I think Godard did that scene, and then he was like, all right, I'm done. That's all the emotional connection I had in me. Say goodbye, because the rest of my movies won't have that.
Yeah, well, at least we got it. It was nice. It was a wonderful old man.
Yes. This is I almost feel like the ending with the explosion and everything. This is Godard's, because he in the back of the Criterion it does talk about this, and I think Ebert talked about this as well, where he kind of like got more and more stylized, hyper stylized after this. And in particular, his more recent films are just collages of images, and character doesn't even factor into them. But this is like his last hurrah of character in his movies and in engaging emotional filmmaking. And
you tried.
Then he explodes that at the end, and then he moves on.
It's fun,
because this is definitely, I feel like a kind of an ending point to his first French New Wave phase, and then he's kind of going into his next crazy old man makes pretentious movie phase.
Some people like it. I also love the cutest scene in the movie of this sweet little old man, and he has a wonderful little story that inspires Belmondo to commit double murder. Maybe that's Godard saying, this is where sentiment gets you. Gets you blown up. It's a great suicide scene, though. That's what we'll do next week. Top 5 movie suicides.
All right. Well, the week after. Diner scenes and then suicides.
Yep. Spoiler alert. It's Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah. So I guess I could just summarize this film as like it's a collage of editing techniques, philosophy, cinematic visuals. Godard is particularly political with this film. Lots of references to Vietnam, and there's a reference to Lebanon and to Israel and to a few other conflicts going on. Americans, filmmaking in general. It's just like Godard is throwing everything out there. If you are bored by one thing, it never sticks on it for too long. It's just all these elements kind of one right after the other. And it's the most fun I feel Godard is having. And that translates to my experience with the film. and I do love it.
I forgot to mention one quick little thing. Is that there's a scene at the beginning at the party with the neon lights where Belmondo is talking to an American director. That director is Samuel Fuller, who I just watched Shot Corridor for the first time. And I remember watching it, and he said Samuel Fuller. I'm like, that can't be the same one. And I looked it up, and I was just, it's a fun little coincidence. It's fun.
And in similar thing in Contempt, I think I've mentioned this before. Fritz Lang is in that, playing himself.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Is Godard's a Ford guy, right?
Yes. Well, I think a lot of the French New Wave people were John Ford guys.
I'm sure John Ford loved it.
I'm sure he's a big fan of Jean-Luc Godard.
I think about all these French people fawning over like My Darling Clementine, and then John Ford being forced to watch Breathless. I'm sure he loved it.
I'm sure the admiration was mutual.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this is obviously on the BFI Sight and Sound 2012 greatest films of all time list. So the question becomes, Chandler, does this deserve to be on there?
That's a tough one. You go first this time.
Great. So it is a tough one. Partially, I want to say I want to say yes, mostly because it's either this or Breathless that I think deserves to be on there. Maybe both.
Really?
If I'm feeling charitable.
Okay.
Both.
You're just going off pure influence.
Yes. Both are here, would deserve a spot, not necessarily for their approachability, their entertainment value, but for their influence on film. And I think for me, Pierrot le Fou is being Godard's most approachable film, being that it is where I think he's playing with color in an interesting way that I don't think I can think of any other movie that really has color and set design in that way. I think the editing is really fun and interesting, gets you thinking, and isn't insufferable. I think for all these reasons, I think if I'm gonna put a Godard film on the list, it's gonna be this one. Probably.
I'll have to go back because I'm pretty sure I gave the Godard pass to Viva Sa Vie. I think I'm going to stick by that. But I'm also conflicted with the fact that I feel that this is more than anything that we've watched so far, reflective of who Godard is as a director. It doesn't necessarily have, because this is 65, you said?
Yeah.
And Breathless is what, 59, 60?
Something like that.
Yeah, so I guess it's only a few years later. I don't know, because Breathless is obviously the more influential, but it still feels like homework, so... Oh, this is tough. Sure. Why not?
If we were to say, like, if we were to create a list of, like, the top 25 most best experimental movies, I'd put this on that list. No questions asked.
Yeah,
just because I think
because it's
experimental wise, it's just
it's the right amount of experiment and enjoyment.
Yes,
it's not experimental wholeheartedly. There's still a story there. There's still characters. It's fun, but it's also interesting. So yeah, let's do it. If I have to put one on the list, one Godard, I'll go with this one. I'll take Viva Sa Vie off. Sorry, women.
You can always take that back later. When we do our retrospective or at the end of everything.
I'm also going to give it to this movie just for the simple fact that I no longer am going to groan when I know we have to watch Godard. Although Breathless I still fucking hate. But maybe I won't. We'll see.
I'm pretty sure Contempt is on the list.
Is it?
And then we have, well, I mean, that means nothing to you. I could like it. I've only seen it the one time. So
okay.
I always go in with a positive attitude. I have a feeling it's not gonna be my thing. I've warmed up quite a bit to a lot of Godard, but I just get the sense that that's not gonna be the one. But hey, it might be the one for you. it is certainly an interesting movie. And of course, we have Breathless, and then we have Histories du Cinema, which we skipped because
Yeah,
it was like an
it's
8-hour
long.
documentary, and I don't know where to watch it. So,
Oh, you can't find. Yeah, that's right. You can't find it anymore. But we're still doing Showa.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sure. Can't do double standard.
Well, theoretically, we're still going to do Histories du Cinema if it's easy to find.
Okay, yeah.
And it might take us a while to get there. Yeah. I'm not writing it off completely.
How much Truffaut is on here? Is it just the 400 blows?
I think it might just be the 400 blows.
That's how I figured. I didn't think there'd be like Shoot the Piano Player or anything.
No, but I feel like I'm pretty sure Jules and Jim isn't on here, but it should be.
Oh yeah, I forgot that was Truffaut. Yeah, I like Truffaut more. I also really want to watch Day for Night, 400 Blows, Jules and Jim. I really want to watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Because I forgot he's in that.
He is, yeah. Godard, I think, is definitely the more interesting filmmaker in terms of filmmaking itself. But just because he feuded with Truffaut on Day for Night and didn't like that movie, I think Truffaut's the better of the two. Just to spite Godard for that.
Truffaut is a human being, and I appreciate that about him. Godard left that in France somewhere.
Godard has shown a pattern of being belligerent to Truffaut. He didn't show up for Agnes Varda in Faces Places.
Faces Places.
Can't forgive him for these things.
I really can't. It adds up. Sorry.
You know, I generally don't apply the mixing up the art and the artists. I like to keep them separate. But Godard's making it hard.
Yeah, a little difficult. Oh, just one quick shout out. I'm sure I've said this before, but I'm just giving another shout out again because I was I now work from home, so I spend a lot of time at my local library, and I gotta say, libraries as far as like movies go are criminally underrated. Go to your local library, listeners. Look at their films. I went there. I found just on one shelf alone there was Aguirre, the Wrath of God, the Apu trilogy, the Card Counter. The
Card Counter? Really?
The Card Counter was in. Yep. There's a little fucking box set of my local library does like a box set thing where they get like 6 or 7 movies, put it like themed or whatever. And there was a Joaquin Phoenix box set, and there was a Paul Schrader box set.
Wow.
It's very odd.
Cool.
But yeah, use your local library. And I saw Pierrot le Fou there, so if for whatever reason I missed the date, I could have went there.
Could have gone and rented from the library.
It would have put me on a list. It would have put me on a list for renting Godard, but I think it was worth it.
Artistic, you were put on like a FBI artistic terrorism watch list.
It's the cinematic equivalent of renting Catcher in the Rye.
Yes. Yeah, great. That was Pierrot le Fou. Thank you for watching, listening, however you did this. If you enjoyed our silly conversation about silly Godard movies, give a like, leave a comment. Tell us if you hate Godard.
Hit the bell.
Hit the bell. Subscribe. Do something. Or nothing. Whatever floats your boat. Thank you for watching.